Hello, friends, lovers in the nighttime, Rollin. I've gathered you here today to discuss something very important: the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. As most of you know, this assassination took place on November 22nd, 1963, by the one Lee Harvey Oswald. Or did it? Now, we have to be secretive because we don't want them catching on to us. But that assassination is not all it seems. Here I have drawn up a sketch of how the assassination took place. As you'll see, where this red X is where the shots hit President Kennedy, first in the neck, then exploding his head. This is a diagram of the car inside, where JFK is sitting, his wife next to him. Down below is the governor of Texas, and the governor of Texas's wife. We have here the Texas School Book Depository, where the one Lee Harvey Oswald has been blamed for shooting from the 6th floor President Kennedy, firing a total of 3 shots, one that hit President Kennedy in the neck and went through his neck and hit the governor of Texas in the arm. The second shot, which has been said to have missed completely, and the third shot, which did the head exploding. This is the motorcade. This is the building. This is the famed grassy knoll. Again, a very large part of the talk behind the assassination is that the killing shot was fired from the grassy knoll, where a second shooter was, this is a fence, sitting behind this fence. This umbrella is marked for the Umbrella Man, who has also been widely theorized to maybe be involved, perhaps as a signal man. And this is where the babushka lady was standing, who's also been theorized to be part of it. This, on the other side, is where Abraham Zapruder was, who took the famous Zapruder film, which was used widely to analyze the evidence of the shooting. This is just another building. So, as they were coming down this street, which I forget the name, I should have known that, shots were fired, hitting President Kennedy in an open-air limo. Again, once through the neck, which also hit the governor of Texas, and once through the skull. Supposedly fired from this spot on the 6th floor school depository, where Lee Harvey Oswald conveniently was an employee. Now, a little background. There are a lot of theories behind this assassination, most of which include that it was CIA involvement, or mob involvement, or the military industrial complex, which was a bunch of rich people who did not like that JFK had wanted to scale out of the Vietnam War because they made a lot of money from war. War makes people a lot of money. Cuba also is a hot point. And then, of course, Russian involvement, because this was during the Cold War. A few things to know about Mr. Lee Harvey Oswald, who was the assassin, never tried, because he was shot being transported from the Dallas jail by one Jack Ruby, who also had mob ties. So Lee was never tried. There was no trial. And it has been basically the official version done by the Warren Commission in 1967, led by Chief Justice Earl Warren, that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone and was just a lone assassin. Then in 1974, the Committee on Assassinations, that might not be right, but basically it was like someone to double check the Warren Commission's work, did not completely agree. They did say that Lee was the shooter, but that there are inconsistencies and that perhaps there might have been more involvement. Other involvements that have been suggested are the Dallas Police Department, lizard people, obviously, and, basically anyone that everything has been thrown on the table for this one. That's why it makes it so exciting. I have had the benefit of not only being in the book depository twice and walking the Daily Plaza, as it is called, where the shooting occurred. Alec has also been there with me. And our initial theory was that it's just so fucking hot in Texas that his head just exploded. Because when we were there, it was the middle of August and it was like 115 degrees and it was just miserable. So Lee Harvey Oswald. Lee Harvey Oswald was an ex-Marine who did take sharpshooting classes. This is important. And he qualified as a sharpshooter, which is basically an average score in the sharpshooting class. The first time he did it, and then the second time he did it, he qualified below as marksman. So he never quite was this insane marksman. He was also using a 6-gauge Caraco rifle that he mail ordered online. There's a very famous picture of him showing a picture of him in his backyard with this rifle. This is the rifle that was found on the 6th floor of the book depository from his sniper's nest. And it had his fingerprints on it, and there was also 3 spent shell casings found in there. Initially, it was reported that the gunshots came from a different kind of rifle, but then was changed, either due to just misidentification or maybe something else. All right, so Lee Harvey Oswald, a pretty disgruntled man. He was in 2 abusive relationships. One was with his mother, and one was with his wife, Mariana. One who was Russian, by the way. That's going to come in handy. So, Lee, to get away from his mother, defected from the United States in, I want to say, 1958, and moved to Russia, which at the time was a big deal because it was right smack in the middle of the Cold War. So, and he was in Russia for a bit, and that's where he met Mariana, and they got married. And then he was granted repatriotism and came back to the United States, which at that time was not that easy to do, but this process seemed to go a little easy for him. He then spent time in New Orleans. This is important because there's a lot of connections between people involved with Jack Ruby, who killed Oswald, and ties from the New Orleans mob to Dallas. New Orleans and Dallas are not super far apart relatively. He was known for his anti-Castro, free Cuba propaganda. So he had set up basically these anti-Castro accounts, which at the time, Castro was not the enemy of Cuba, or of the United States, excuse me, because Castro was not pro-communism at that point. until, well, he was, but then he wasn't. Anyways, so he had done a lot of that stuff, and that put him on the radar for the federal government. Because, again, coming back from Russia, this was a big deal. And basically trying to petition for these free Cuba now kind of states and protests. You know, it put him on a list. Then he and Mariana moved to Dallas, and Lee's having a hard time. He's kind of that, he does fit that lone kind of shooter profile. He is abusive to his wife. He has trouble holding down a job. And his mother is there not being helpful. Also, they have a baby. Anyways, so Lee gets a job a month before. So in October of 1963, a month before the assassination, Lee gets a job at the Texas School Book Depository, which is a building right off the road on Daley Plaza, which is where the shots were fired from. So I'm not disputing that Lee Harvey Oswald did not shoot JFK. I believe that. I believe he shot him. I believe he got a lucky shot in the headshot. And was able to get off 3 shots. However, I don't think this was just his idea. I think that this was an idea by the CIA in order to get rid of Kennedy and put in a more conservative Lyndon B. Johnson as vice president, who also is from Texas. Just saying that. It also should be noted that Lee Harvey Oswald did go into the Dallas FBI office a couple weeks before the assassination and kind of caused a little bit of a scene, but that was just kind of pushed in the back of everyone's mind. But again, we're going back to the map. So, I wholeheartedly agree that Lee Harvey Oswald fired 3 shots from his rifle at JFK's car. The first one does hit JFK and also hits the governor of Texas in the wrist here. And I'm sorry, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Now, a lot of people think that this proves that it wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald because of the magic bullet theory. Because there's no way the bullet would have been able to hit JFK in the neck and then somehow ricochet into the governor of Texas's arm. That being said, this isn't like you're just sitting in your normal car. JFK and Jackie were on heightened seats in the limo. Because, you know, they're the president and first lady. They're more important. So they are sitting at a higher angle than as you would if it was just 2 people sitting in the back and middle seats of a car. So, I do believe that the shot could have originated from here, hit JFK in the neck, and guess what? When a bullet hits something, shit changes. And then hit the governor of Texas, who's sitting right there, in the arm. So, I would like to debunk that magic bullet theory right now. Because, again, they were seated higher, they were on a higher plane, so that trajectory could work. Now, the grassy knoll is where it gets interesting. Because the very famous shot in the Zapruder film of the headshot shows JFK's head going back and to the left, And if you haven't seen the JFK movie by Oliver Stone, absolutely watch it. It is unhinged. It's awesome. Which would propose that, and you're seeing this backwards from the way I drew it, so, but this is on my left-hand side. And so the way he would be, well, whatever. Don't worry about it. So, the theory is that the killing shot came from the grassy knoll, which is on this side over here. That hit Kennedy for that final kill shot in the head, snapping his head back and to the left. Whereas the main theory for this is because if he was hit from back here, you would think his head would snap forward with the propulsion of the bullet. A lot of debate about this. Because of the way the brainstem works, with such a propulsive object coming into your head and exploding it, that the nerves snap in a certain way, that it's not necessarily that if he was shot from back here, it would be, but because it did just such a concussive force, reasonable explanation. Reasonable. I'll give him that. But here's the thing. There's a big fence back here by the grassy knoll. A lot of people, a very populated area. I didn't really draw them, but lots of people. A lot of witness reports of a gunshot coming from either behind them, especially people in front of the grassy knoll, and people down here saying from over here. But again, that's unreliable. Gunshots, especially in a plaza where there is echoing, not super trustworthy. However, my theory is that Lee Harvey Oswald was recruited by the CIA secretly to lay shots down on John F. Kennedy. The CIA had a gentleman in the grassy knoll to be there in case that Lee could not complete his mission. Either that being he gets scared and just doesn't fire at all, or he's not the marksman that he is, or is thought to be. So, my theory is the first shot comes from Lee, hits John F. Kennedy in the neck. That bullet ricochets into the governor of Texas. Second shot misses. At this point, things are starting to get a little sticky. Third shot, again, was fired from Lee Harvey Oswald. There's shells that he fired, 3 shots. I believe the third shot also missed. At this point, our CIA agent over here fires the kill shot. Lee escapes through this alley. He runs to a theater where he's eventually... he kills a police officer too. By the way, I forgot to mention that. So on his escape route, he gets pulled over and he shoots the police officer and kills Dallas police officer Tipton. And then he is eventually arrested in a movie theater, not too far from the assassination spot. The entire time, Mr. Oswald claims that he is just a patsy, didn't kill anybody. Then it gets even more spicy. Because he's interrogated, he's not really saying anything, he's only saying he's a patsy, blah, 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 he's a patsy. Then a couple things are going on at this point. JFK is immediately transported to Parkland Hospital, where he is pronounced dead after they attempts to save him. But, he had no skull at that point. Instead of performing the autopsy in the Parkland Hospital, it is demanded that JFK's body be flown to Bethesda Military Hospital in Maryland. which it is. But the Dallas doctors that worked on him and coroners down there did not get access to the body to do an autopsy. So they flew that body a few hours before it was finally autopsied. Now, there's a lot of discrepancies in the autopsy. I won't go into all of that. But let's just say it's a little sketchy. There's debates on whether it was even actually Kennedy's body that was being autopsied. The skull shapes don't match. Again, the man got shot in the head, so that's going to change some of the skull shape. Documents that weren't released and still have not been, even though they have been promised for years, they're still hidden documents. And just the fact, that's a lot of time between the assassination of the leader of the free world and the autopsy. So that leaves a lot of questions. It took a while. They did a lot of interviews. They did a lot of everything. And they had their suspect in custody. Unfortunately, while they're transporting him, while there's press outside, while they're transporting him, basically out in the open, like a free-for-all, insane. Jack Ruby, a local club owner who has mafia ties, shoots Lee Harvey Oswald as he's being escorted out by the Dallas Police Department and kills him. Jack Kirby is arrested. Jack Kirby eventually dies in prison before he can be tried either. So, JFK gets murdered. Lee Harvey Oswald gets murdered. No one was even tried for these attacks because Lee Harvey Oswald died and Jack Ruby died in prison before his trial. It's looking a little iffy. Obviously, this was the biggest deal in the world for a long time. Huge shock to the nation. There was the Warren Commission, which again was put in charge of, let's look at the evidence and see what happened, because there's no trial to be had. Again, it was led by Chief Justice Earl Warren of the Supreme Court and multiple members of higher up government offices, including Allen Dulles, who was, believe it or not, the former director of the CIA. Anyways, the Warren Commission goes through all this blah, blah, blah. They post like they release an 800-page report that says Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. That's it. Just a lone gunman shooting to Prezi. Again, this was disputed in 1975 by the House Committee on Assassinations, I want to say. Again, they did, to be clear, they didn't say Lee Harvey didn't shoot them. They did say Lee Harvey shot JFK, but possibly did not act alone. Again, nothing definite. Lots of disputes, lots of conspiracies. Again, like there was mob ties, there's all this sketchy stuff. And I have rambled on for about 25 minutes, so we're just going to wrap this up again. Again, Lee Harvey Oswald did shoot JFK. But the killing shot came from the grassy knoll by a CIA operative who was working in cahoots with Lee Harvey Oswald. Then Jack Ruby was hired or coerced, more likely, by the CIA to shoot Lee Harvey Oswald. Also in cahoots with the Dallas Police Department, because it's just absolutely insane that Jack Ruby was able to shoot Lee Harvey Oswald like that. Like literally on camera. Like just whack. So, in conclusion, the CIA did kill JFK through Mr. Oswald, because it is also suspected that that first shot probably would have killed Kennedy anyways, after he bled out. But with help from Mr. CIA buddy. Poor Umbrella Man was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Babushka Lady was just a lady who looked Russian, so everyone was mad at her. And, yeah. That's it. Thank you for listening. I will have more.